Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make almond brioche toast, or it's also called brioche with almonds, or if you go into a bakery, it's often called Bostock. And this is what it looks like. What we have is thick slices of brioche. We're going to moisten that with a sugar syrup and then spread on some almond cream and sprinkle with some shaved almonds. Really good. So the first thing we need to do is to make our sugar syrup. So you will need a small saucepan. We're going to make this sugar syrup equal parts sugar and water. So I mean, this recipe, you can scale it up, scale it down. So I'm going to start with a half a cup, 120 grams, 120 milliliters of just water. And I'm going to add to that a half a cup, 100 grams of granulated white sugar. That's it. And then we're just going to put this over medium-high heat, bring it to a boil, and then just boil it just until the sugar is dissolved. Pretty easy. Okay, so it's boiling right now, and the sugar is dissolved. I'm just going to take it off the heat. That's it. So now, I'm going to let this cool down to room temperature. We are going to add some flavoring, but it's a little too hot right now. And put that aside, and next we're going to make our almond cream. So now we're going to make our almond cream, but first preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius. Now when you make your almond cream, if you have a stand mixer like I have, use your paddle attachment. You could use a hand mixer, or really you could make this by hand. First thing you will need is a half a cup, 113 grams of butter. I'm using unsalted butter. I like the flavor and I can regulate the salt better in the recipe. And have it at room temperature. And I'm just going to beat it until it's nice and smooth. Okay, and that's good. Next, a half a cup, 100 grams of granulated white sugar. Put that in there, along with a half a teaspoon, 2 grams of pure vanilla extract. And I'm just going to beat that until everything's mixed together. And I want a little air in there to make your cream a little lighter. So medium-high speed, maybe for a minute or two. Okay, so as always, scrape down the sides and the bottom of your bowl every once in a while to make sure everything gets mixed together. And next we're going to add 1 large egg. That would be 50 grams of egg. And have it at room temperature. I'm just going to beat that in. Scrape. So now for our dry ingredients. In a bowl I have 1 cup, which is 115 grams of ground almonds. Now you can buy ground almonds usually either on the baking aisle or in the health food section, or what you could do is just take either sliced or whole almonds and then just process them in your food processor until they're finely ground. But if you do that, watch it carefully. You don't want to make a paste out of it. So there, and then I'm going to add to that 3½ tablespoons, which is 30 grams of all-purpose flour. You may know that as plain flour. And then I'm just adding like a pinch of salt, 1/8 teaspoon. Now, if you did use salted butter, which you can, then I would leave out that salt. So I'm just going to mix that and add it, and then just beat it in. Start at slow speed. You don't want that ground almonds coming up in your face. Okay, we're done with our almond cream, also called frangipane. You may know it by that name. The good thing about this is you can make it like the day you're going to make this pastry, or what you can do is make it like a couple days ahead of time and then just cover and refrigerate it. Or it also can be frozen. And okay, so back to our sugar syrup. I'm going to flavor this with some rum, 2 tablespoons. Another really good addition would be Grand Marnier, give you a bit of an orange flavor. Now, if you don't want to use alcohol, you can just leave out the alcohol, like the rum, just leave it out. And what you could do is you could add a little bit of pure almond extract, a little bit of pure vanilla. You could add a little bit of like orange zest, and that would give our toast a little orange flavor, which would be very good. And this, again, like the almond cream you can make ahead of time, you could make this like a couple weeks ahead of time. Just put it in a covered container, put it in your fridge, and you're good to go. So I'm just going to clean this up, come back, and we're going to assemble our toasts and bake them off. So to make our toast, first have a baking sheet, line it with parchment paper, or you could just lightly butter it or spray it with one of those nonstick sprays. This recipe, the amount of almond cream, the amount of sugar syrup we made, you can make 12 of these toasts. I'm only going to make 4 today, but you can scale it up if you want, make it all, or scale it down. Now, you will need, you don't want fresh brioche for this, you want stale. So it's a great way to use it up. At least a day old. Mine is about, I think, 3 to 4 days, so great way to use it up. And what you're going to do first, I do have a recipe for homemade brioche on the joyofbaking.com website. I do recommend you make your own. It is really good. Now, you'll want to slice your brioche 1 inch thick, 2.5 centimeters, which I've already done. And then just put on your baking sheet, like so. And then we have to start assembling. First, the sugar syrup. Now, I like to brush both the top and the bottom side of my brioche with the sugar syrup. If you prefer like the bottom of your toast to be really quite crisp and crunchy, then maybe you don't want to do that. You know, one thing I would suggest, try it both ways, and then you can decide which way you like better. Now, depending on how stale your brioche is, it may absorb a lot of sugar syrup or just a bit, but I just like a light coating. Okay, so I've done both the bottom and the top with the sugar syrup. Oh, we're done with that. Any leftover, just put it back in the fridge, covered container. Now for the almond cream. You will need, now these are about 4-inch slices, you know, both ways, which is about 10 centimeters. And for that, about this size, I'm going to put 2 tablespoons, which is 28 grams of almond cream. I'm using actually an ice cream scoop that is 2 tablespoons. Makes it easy. And then just take a, back of a spoon or knife. Use an offset spatula here. Just spread that out as you want a thin layer. I don't like it too thick. I mean, I like to taste it, but don't get too carried away. I'm going to show you 2 ways to make. Let's put a little more on there. Your Bostock. So you can do that, and then just take, maybe a tablespoon of, really use as many or as little as you want, of shaved almonds, and just put it over the top, and then just kind of lightly press those in. Now, that's one way. Now, this is my favorite way I'm going to show you. I like to take a little bit of raspberry jam. Maybe a tablespoon. You can use store-bought. This is homemade, which you can go to the joyofbaking.com website, and there is a recipe for homemade raspberry jam, which is so good. And then just spread that out. I like the raspberry jam because it adds a little bit of tartness, which cuts through. This is pretty rich with the brioche and the almond cream. So the raspberry jam cuts through that and just adds this another layer of flavor. So just put that on and then put your almond cream. Now we'll kind of get all kind of mixed together. And don't worry, because once it bakes off, you won't even notice. So just spread that out as best as you can. And again, after you do that, then spread on some almonds. Okay, so did 2 with the raspberry and 2 without. So just press that down. Now, forgot to mention that you can just go to our YouTube channel and you will find a recipe for the brioche and the raspberry jam. So either way. Now, we're going to bake these, but you don't have to bake them off right away. This is a great do ahead. So what you could do is just do it to this point, cover it, put it in the fridge overnight, and then you could bake them off the next morning. Or you can even just wrap each one individually and freeze them for a month. And then what I like to do is defrost them in the refrigerator overnight and then bake them off. So everyone's oven is a little different. I find 15, but kind of closer to 20 minutes. What you want is, you want the brioche to toast and the bottom will become lightly brown, and then you want the almond cream to set. It will start to brown a little and puff. So 15 to 20 minutes, you want to rotate your pan halfway through baking. So our almond brioche toast is done. So put your pan on a wire rack, and as you can see, the almond cream is just starting to brown around the edges. And see if I can lift this up. I don't know whether you can see. The bottom is nice and golden brown. So now I'm going to they're really hot, so I am going to let them cool down a few minutes, and then take your spatula and transfer them to the wire rack to cool down. Probably you can to room temperature, and then when we come back, we'll try one. Okay, so let's try one. Now you can have these warm from the oven, room temperature, or even if you have leftovers, cover them, put them in the fridge. I eat them cold. Anyway, it's good by me. So dress them up, little sprinkling of powdered sugar. You know, this pastry looks and tastes way more than the amount of work. So it's a great do-ahead, like I said. Oh, look at that. I'm eating the one with raspberry jam. So you have the brioche, you have the jam, you have the almond cream, almonds. This tastes, you know, for the amount of work, this tastes way better than that. It tastes like a really fancy pastry. You have that brioche, kind of crisp, and then, you know, the rum syrup, sugar syrup, adds a little bit of moisture and flavor, and then you have the raspberry jam, the almond cream, almonds on top. It's really a nice pastry. When you have it warm like this, the almond cream is almost like custardy, so very good. You have to make these. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joyofbaking.com.